Okay, so today we take a look at Psikyo Shooting Stars Alpha on the Nintendo Switch. This one, it's a collection of 6 shmups, but are these the next shooters you should be adding to your collection? Did they basically port across these classics in the right way? Well, as a shooter fan, I'm here to find that out, so hit subscribe if you find this video in any way useful. Check out the channel for the rest of our Switch reviews and news. We've got like 150 videos live right now, and then sit back, relax, and let's get started. So it's going to be slightly different. Normally we rate games on story, gameplay, graphics and audio. Today we're going to be talking about each of the 6 games individually before giving this whole package a final verdict. I'm going to link some timestamps in the comments below, so if you do want to jump to a particular title, head there now to do it. With that though, let's start with Strikers 1945, the first of the Strikers trilogy included. Strikers, first off, incredibly difficult series, and for the hardcore shmup players out there, this trilogy of games, it's the first thing you should be checking out in this collection. Released originally back in 1995, the first in the series, it sets its presence strong as a contender to be considered a classic. Don't expect a story, this one it's all about the gameplay and challenge, nothing more. Graphically speaking, Strikers 1945 is more muted than we may be used to in the genre, you know, guns that space setting or fantasy world, replaced with a very much grounded World War II skin. Yes, it looks good, but it's for sure more dull than most when it comes to its colour palette. Fortunately though, they have brightened this up with some serious fantasy elements. Think multicoloured bullets, power-ups and then mechs invading the battlefield. I didn't say it was realistic. Also, this was one of the first titles to really master that bullet hell vibe with that spread of bullets going everywhere. Overall, it's a great looking game that finds a balance between fantasy and reality, and as with many games in this package, you also get the option here of a vertical play mode. I strongly suggest it. If you don't own one, you should seriously consider grabbing a flip grip for this. They're super cheap and it's a perfect accessory to complement this collection. When it comes to gameplay, this one for me, at least, it's genre defining, tight controls, multiple power-ups, challenging enemies for sure, and they even added in 7 difficulty options. It started a fantastic series, so just respect for that. As I said at the beginning, this one, it's tough. Strikers, the trilogy, is tough in general. They were designed to basically just eat quarters in the arcade machines, and you can feel that even on the easiest of easiest difficulties. If you're a newbie, this series, it's not the place to start when you pick up this collection. Now, while this first entry, it's not the best in the Strikers series, it is very much a reflection of how good the genre can be. Solid graphics, great gameplay, and a simplistic yet effective chiptune soundtrack make this one a must-play and more than earns its spot here. Strikers 1945 too carries on its older brother's legacy and truly does the name justice. This one was released in 1997, just a couple of years later, again for arcade, so it's carrying across that incredibly high difficulty that was found in the original. But this one, I'll say, it's my personal favourite of the Strikers series. Like the original, it continues with Siro story elements, instead focusing on gameplay and just challenge. Graphically, again, we do get World War II. But with this sequel, I will say they added a bit more colour to the whole experience. The enemies, they remain very similar to the original in design, but they add more colour to the skins. There's neon bullets all over the place, just like the original, but here I just felt like there was flashier visual effects as the screen fills with explosions, and generally the background worlds were a little more exciting. It just pushes it beyond the original. Gameplay here, it feels just as good as the original, but I will say the enemy actions, they just felt a little bit more intentional, and I've got to say I like that a lot. The gameplay is clearly near identical, but I just get this slight sense of improvement overall, like an extra level of smoothness. Finally, the audio, it's strong throughout with another great high energy soundtrack that I actually do listen to personally offline. This one, you're going to get hours out of it, or at least I did. It's the best in the Strikers series by far, and I'm going to be returning a lot. Last up for Strikers, we get Strikers 3, or more commonly known as Strikers 1999. This one, it finally ditches that World War II skin and takes us on a more modern warfare approach. I'm going to keep this one short here, expect more of the same with a skin swap out. Gameplay is near identical, you control a jet, collect power-ups, you kick ass against waves of enemies. At this point, they'd mastered the genre, that bullet hell feeling, those patterns, and they were simply looking at ways to give us more of the same with a twist. People loved it, so yeah, people wanted more. I'm okay with that. Graphically speaking, the modern setting also allowed the series to kind of break away from the dull colour palette I've been mentioning, and that's definitely a positive. Here you can expect futuristic craft design, some truly creative enemies, and Psikyo flexed their muscles here, creating weird looking enemies that could, of course, kill you in seconds. My personal favourite, a spider looking mech. As before, you're going to find also the option to play vertically, and as always, it's the definitive way to play this one. Overall, Strikers 1999 is a great game which feels just more creative overall. Yes, I'm speaking visually, that's about it, and it's definitely not as good as the second, mainly because it's just more of a minor update than anything. But fortunately, when the second one is a 10 out of 10 title, that's far from a bad thing. So Dragon Blaze, we're entering the fantasy world at this point, and it doesn't skimp on getting crazy. Here you take on the role of a dragon rider out to collect 4 crystals. Story-wise, yeah, don't expect depth, but it's still nice to have some level of, development alongside my shooting. For those curious, this story, it's all presented in text-based format, so don't go in with, high hopes for crazy cutscenes or anything else. It's more an excuse to move from one scene to the next, but it's also better than nothing. World War II, it's kind of easy to not have a story in a sense as with Strikers, but here it made sense to tell me why I'm riding some huge-ass dragon. Not that I'm complaining. Graphically speaking, Dragon Blaze for me, it's the best looking game in this collection by far. Vivid colours, creative enemy design, some great background worlds, and then to top it all off, you're a badass warrior riding a dragon. Did I mention that already? That's worth mentioning a few times. I don't think the genre really needs any more. They checked all the boxes. This fantasy world also opens up a whole new level of creativity for attacks. Yeah, you get the usual neon coloured bullets, it's pretty much standard now in these packages. How about skulls flying towards your enemy in neon glory, or even swords flying through the air? With this one, I love the fact they just embraced that over-the-top crazy a fantasy world provided them, and it showed what they could do once the restraints were off. Also, I'll get it out of the way now, like Strikers vertical mode, sweet vertical mode. Gameplay wise, another great entry to the shmup genre, smooth movement, responsive controls, the standard power-ups, and varying difficulties provide enough options here to actually entice any level of player. Unlike Strikers, this one, on its easy setting, it's relatively entry level, so if you're new to the shmups world, this is my recommended place for you to start. Compared to Strikers, it just feels a little less hectic. Enemy fire is more tame, not, filling the entire screen. And then the scrolling pace of the world, it's just a little bit slower. It makes for something a bit more manageable. Don't worry though, shmup addicts out there, ramp that difficulty up and you'll quickly find yourself in bullet hell again. What is interesting here though is with gameplay they tried something new and it works, a mechanic of leaving your dragon behind. What I mean here is basically with this one you position your dragon where you want him to be and then jump off. How to train your dragon much? I wonder if it influenced that. But what this means is the dragon will continue to fire power-ups while you attack from a different angle minus any real strength honestly. It's an interesting gameplay option though because it adds a new level of strategy to the whole experience. When can you use this, you might ask? Well, for me, when I faced the boss, I would often just drop the dragon off right in front of them while I avoided bullets from the back. It was a pretty cool feeling, honestly, to strategically storm them. Last up, for Dragon Blaze audio, it's okay. The sound effects relatively minimal, but the soundtrack's just kind of disappointing. It's a little slow. I wish it was a little faster paced, match my natural panic. It just wasn't quite there for me. Overall though, for me, this one, it's another great entry in the collection and it for sure will not disappoint outside of that soundtrack. Now let's talk completely different, Soul Defied Sword of Darkness. This one breaks from the rest of this video so far and actually goes with a horizontal layout, no vertical play here. It's also the first with a story accompanied by actual cutscenes. Expect a tale of revenge, treasures and hunting down, of course, a big bad boss. Nothing too deep, but I will say it's fun. Graphically speaking, when this one originally released, I'm sure it just blew Strikers and Dragon Blaze away. Unfortunately, it's not aged well at all. It's unique for sure, but the whole thing just feels a little too pixelated and generally dated. It's, you know, early days 3D, and honestly, there's probably very little they could have done to hide that with this re-release. I feel like for those not used to a more vintage video game experience though, this one, it's probably going to be the hardest for them to digest. Gameplay wise, Defied is a challenging one, but in my opinion as well, for all the wrong reasons. Characters and enemies, they're on the larger side first off. What they've done is implemented life bars for each, meaning often you'll just be attacking the same one for ages as they close in right next to you. Also, this style of gameplay means you feel less like a badass trying to take down this life bar. You know, you don't really get that freedom to maneuver in and out of attacks and bullets. There's just not enough space here for you to really do that or just feel like a skill-based badass. One positive I will say though, to accommodate this slower pace and more in-your-face enemy attacks, they do equip you with some more unique attack types. The options are melee for close quarters and magic that fill the entire screen. The responsiveness of these though was a little bit slow in my opinion. One really strong area for this one though, the audio. Weapons, they sound unique and the soundtrack is standout. It's high energy while maintaining that more classical theme in its instrument choices. It adds to the excitement while also matching the visuals and story to add, you know, that kind of necessary level of epic and fantasy. Audio wise, it's probably one of the strongest two in this particular collection. Unfortunately though, it's the weakest game. I did have some fun with it. Don't expect that standard formula. They definitely tried something different here and it kind of works in its own right. But I can tell you now, I will not be going back to this one. Last up for today's collection, we have Siro Gunner 2, a Dreamcast release, one of my favourite consoles of all time. And this one, we get no story, but overall we do get something incredibly unique. First off, graphically, it's not aged anywhere nearly as badly as Defied. You know, we've got 3D crafts, enemies and power-ups that fill your screen. And then the backgrounds for their age, they're incredibly well detailed. Let me say here again, I'm a Dreamcast fan. I know this isn't exactly high detail, but it has a whole level of charm that I personally can't resist. For me though, flying across oceans, skylines and moving trains, that's pretty standout for a title that is now nearly 20 years old. What I really liked was their use of depth of field to show the size of some of the enemies and structures you'll be maneuvering over. You'll see robots climbing buildings here. It's the first in this collection that really demonstrates the size of the world around you. Gameplay, this one, it's just weird. The 360 rotation of your craft the game provides you would be perfect for twin stick shooter style. You don't get that here. Instead, you place a marker on the screen with a button and rotate around it. It's as weird as it sounds. It's going to take some time getting used to it, that's for sure, and you'll also die a lot getting used to it. But I've got to give this one credit. Be patient, it will come to you, and you'll actually find a great experience in here under all of this weirdness. This control style, I'm sure, also explains why this is by far the easiest game in today's collection, and it makes total sense because if it wasn't easy, this one would be just insanely frustrating. To keep things exciting though, a great decision was its screen movement. It isn't just horizontal or vertical progression here, but it just goes all over the place. You're following it around. It keeps the brainwaves going as you move along for the ride, but it also adds to that feeling that there truly is a war going on all around you and not just immediately in front of you. Audio wise then, it's another great one. Fantastic soundtrack accompanying some solid weaponry effects. The soundtrack, in fact, it has the whole kind of futuristic sound field that I just couldn't personally resist. For the audio, this one takes the crown next to Defied as best in the collection. Overall, Siro Gunner 2, it's by far the most interesting to look back on, and I had a lot of fun revisiting it. It's a great throwback to a game that's, well, unfortunately nearly now just kind of forgotten by the masses. It doesn't deserve that. It's a fantastic collection of games that any fan of the shmup genre should pick up. For the more traditional players out there, we get the Strikers titles alongside, Dragon Blaze, which is also awesome. And then for something a little different, we get Defied and Siro Gunner 2. With 6 titles packaged here for $40 in the US or £40 in the UK, it's not bad at all. Yes, I will say now you can buy them all on the eShop separately at around the $8 or £8 mark, minus Strikers free. That one's not available on the eShop, so this might be a good reason to pick up this physical. But basically the way to look at this one is you're getting 6 games for the price of 5. I'm okay with a free game. If you're a fan of the genre or looking to get into it, you could do a lot worse than this collection, and it gets the strongest of recommendations from me. Even the weakest game here, Defied, I still had a fun little experience with it, and the rest, there's just some masterclass examples of how to do the genre justice, and I guarantee I'll be returning to all of them. Today I'm giving this one an amazing 9 out of 10. Thanks so much for watching. Hit that like button, hit subscribe, join the family. Let me know some of your favourite shmups in the comments below. And with that, we'll see you all on the next Gaming X.